Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome Jeffrey Peters. He's a healthcare executive, and today's Kevin MD article is Ending Physicians' Addiction to Unhappiness. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
All right. So, just tell us briefly about your story and then talk about the Kevin MD article that you shared with us.
Yeah, I think always in healthcare, I've worked at the intersection between physicians and health systems. Probably my first endeavor in the healthcare field after graduate school was helping what's now part of the University of Chicago break into a new market where they had virtually less than 1% market share. So this is 40 years ago, much different than today. So we built ambulatory care centers. And what was very unique then is we began to employ non-academic physicians and link them to the health system. So building ambulatory care centers with urgent aid and physicians' offices, we were able to take their market share from 0 to 20%. It's sustained itself and it generates about $100 million in incremental EBITDA for the bottom line. So I've been very interested my entire career in physicians and how health systems successfully work with them.
All right. And you wrote your Kevin MD article, Ending Physicians' Addiction to Unhappiness. Obviously, with that intersection between health systems and physicians, you have a front row view about the morale and some of the obstacles physicians face today. So tell us what led you to write this article. And then for those who didn't get a chance to read it, tell us about the article itself.
Yeah, well, my husband's a physician, and not to be trite, a lot of our friends are physicians. And what strikes me is when we get together to have dinner or just to socialize, Kevin, something you hear all the time. All they do is complain
Hmm.
about how awful it is to practice medicine today. The reimbursement's dropping, there's greater burdens on them in their practice, and they can't believe they chose this as a profession. So I think there's a high degree of unhappiness amongst physicians. It's why 40% of all physicians are looking to change positions in the next 2 years. And the response, because the majority of physicians, particularly in primary care like you, Kevin, are employed, is the health system puts greater demands on that physician to see more patients, to do rather than having an LPN or a nurse to assist them, a medical assistant that doesn't provide experience. And they feel like they're hamsters on the wheel. They're just not happy. And physicians are so vitally important to all of our lives. They're the ones there at the most critical points in our lives. So if we want to make healthcare better, we need to improve physician satisfaction and happiness because there's a direct correlation between physician satisfaction and patient outcomes.
Oh, I'm so happy that you said that because that is a correlation that I always emphasize whenever this topic does come up. Now, whenever you meet physicians, whether it's in a social setting or whatnot, and they have these complaints, whether it's focus on revenue and decrease reimbursement and things like that, are they justified to complain? Do they have legitimate reasons why they're unhappy?
I don't think there's any question that there's legitimate reasons. Physicians are very well trained. They sacrificed a lot of their life to get their training. And there's people that really don't understand the patient care experience that are trying to tell physicians like you how to practice, what to do. They're relegated to employees with no voice, and that doesn't work in any settings. So, yes, I think we've created an environment, particularly within the hospital insurance employed physician sector where we've taken away physicians' ability to care for their patients and self-actualize.
And how did it get to this point when it comes to taking away that physician autonomy, knowing that, as you said, physician satisfaction is correlated with patient outcomes? How do we get to this point?
Yeah, so I've been a hospital CEO. I've been in the executive suite. The pressure in the executive suite from the board is to improve the bottom line.
Hmm.
It's not to have better outcomes or to have a more satisfied workforce. It's have you grown the enterprise's revenue and have you grown our cash reserves? So the people making decisions are not focused on what drives physician behavior, and in my opinion, better patient care. And ultimately, that's a failure of the system, but I think there's answers.
Now, are you saying that there is no long-term correlation between better patient outcomes and increased revenue? Aren't some of the ways that hospitals are paid is based on patient outcomes?
A very small percent.
Mm,
So, it might affect 1 to 2%. And I think hospitals are aware of those outcomes and are working towards those outcomes, but they're working towards that metric. They're not working at the underlying tension that would, in my opinion, solve problems. And making money isn't bad. It
yeah.
allows us to invest in technology. It allows us to build facilities in closer access to patients. Nobody is saying that hospitals and health systems shouldn't make money. I just think part of the formula and actually, the sustainable competitive advantage for health systems is ones that create an environment where physicians feel valued and appreciated. And if you create that environment, you're going to see exponential returns in terms of patient satisfaction, clinical outcomes, and financial performance. So I just think that's part of the formula
Hmm.
that healthcare executives don't always exercise.
And how did you come to that realization? Because as you said, there's a lot of pressure on hospital CEOs and hospital executives team to maximize revenue, and sometimes clinician satisfaction doesn't really factor in that equation. Now, how did you come to that realization that physician satisfaction matters?
Because the majority of my work has been with physicians. And obviously, when I'm at home, I'm talking to a physician. And what I found is when I paid attention to what the physicians wanted and gave them that, everything improved. It's as basic as you're a primary care physician. You should have a say in who your office manager is.
Hmm.
You should have a say in how your practice operates, what your schedule is, how many patients you see, all of those important issues. We need to put physicians in a governance and decision-making body. And I've seen that where, we're losing over $200,000 nationally per employed physician. I worked with one system where we put a group of physician leaders together. The board said, we need to get this loss down by $50,000 a physician by the end of the year. And if we exceed that loss, meaning we do better, we'll share that with all of you. But we'll give you some analytical support, some consulting support, but you decide how many physicians we need. How do we structure compensation? How do we organize the practice? And lo and behold, in 12 months, they dropped the loss by 50%. and patient satisfaction and clinical outcomes increased. So I don't think it's magical. Physicians are really bright. If you put them in a position of governance and decision making, they make the right decisions. We just need to trust them to do that.
And why aren't more medical institutions doing what you say? How common is it to have that physician empowerment and that physician governance? Would you say that it is a growing trend, or do you still see some friction towards that approach?
Yeah, I don't think there's one description that fits all. Increasingly, what we're seeing is presidents of health systems being physicians with a clinical background. Sunny Eben is the head of the Vermont health system is a key example. Sunny came out of Brigham Women and Children's. And I think physicians in leadership get it,
Hmm.
and they're able to put other physicians in power, but it's not uniformly. There's still issues of control, and I'm the CEO and I know better than anyone else. But if you're gonna make change and if you're gonna make improvements, you've got to empower physicians and you've got to create an environment again where physicians feel valued and appreciated.
Now, in terms of next steps, like how does one go about doing that in terms of changing that organizational culture to give physicians some of that autonomy that we're talking about today?
Yeah, I think it starts with having honest conversations with the entire physician group. Our reimbursement is dropping. It's going to drop further in the next 2 years. We've got financial pressures, and we can't afford to lose $250,000 per employed physician. We want you to be part of the solution. And what we'd like is your thoughts on creating a governance structure, for lack of a better word, a physician board to
Hmm.
guide our employed physician group. We'd like to talk to you about what the makeup should be. What are you looking for? And we'll give you the analytical support, the practice management support. Will give you people that'll help come up with ideas, but we want you to make the decisions and we want to break down the barriers. But you can't just have physician governance at the top. Physicians have to have a say in how their individual practice works
Hmm.
in their pod, because physicians relate to their pod and who they work with on a daily basis. And to talk to them about that, we also want to change the compensation. So if you're successful in improving clinical outcomes, in improving patient satisfaction, and improving financial performance, you're going to be rewarded financially, because you can't make effective change unless the financial incentives are aligned. But we want to do that with you.
Hmm.
It takes a lot longer to create this structure, but it's sustainable and it gets better results.
So take us behind the scenes when it comes to these board meetings and executive meetings where there is an emphasis on improving hospital revenue. Is there any physician voice in those meetings in a majority of cases?
Yes, yes. I think there always is. Every hospital has a chief medical officer. Increasingly, hospital boards are involving chairs of key departments, internal medicine, surgery in there. So once the topic is introduced, you're going to get physicians in leadership who are going to say, I agree with that. I think it makes total sense. And I think there's a model. I think physician-owned multi-specialty group practices do better than hospital-owned multi-specialty practices. And I think the reason why is the financial incentives are aligned,
Hmm.
and that physicians are in a decision-making position. So we don't have to create a new model. A model that's been successful for decades is in existence. We just need to duplicate that physician-owned group practice in a health system-owned group practice, and you'll get overwhelming support by physicians, and you will see physicians not leaving as much, physicians delaying retirement. And as the culture builds, physicians will encourage other physicians to join. And it's not going to be utopia, but I think there's going to be improvements. And I've seen it in multiple organizations.
Tell us a story of one of those success stories, those improvements where you suggested or seen some of the changes that we're talking about today, and it really improved physician morale so they can, as you say, end their addiction to unhappiness. Tell us a success story.
Yeah, I don't want to name the institution
Sure.
because I don't have approval, but this is an institution in the Midwest where the board saw a deterioration in financial performance and basically put the CEO on notice. Either you get these losses down or we'll get a new CEO. It was that clear. And he got the message, and he put together a group of the physician leaders to look at it. I had the privilege of being asked to be a consultant to help them. And we put in a new compensation system. We changed the way decisions are made and really made it a more centric environment. Key to making that change is if the financial performance exceeded the board stated goal, half of that went to the physicians, but they got to divide up how they allocated that, and they ultimately divided it up by RVUs. So the system did better financially, the physicians did better, and this relatively small health system in the Midwest, because of its strength, was able to grow, and a very larger system in a much bigger city about 50 miles away got into trouble.
Hmm.
A very well-known big system that was twice the size, and the board had changed CEOs, and this larger system still didn't do well, and there was a lot of animosity. And what the board said is, we need to merge with a physician-centric system. So they took this smaller Midwestern system and merged, and now the system is 3 times the size in less than a decade. Strong financial performance, improved clinical outcomes, and it's a way not only to help a short-term problem, but it's really the right way to grow strategically and to grow in a way that's sustainable. So I think it's part of the magic sauce successful systems need to be aware of. If we can improve how we employ and manage and empower systems, that's a cultural uniqueness
Hmm.
that few organizations are able to do. But if you can pull that off, you will be stronger going forward.
We're talking to Jeffrey Peters. He's a healthcare executive, and today's Kevin MD article is Ending Physicians' Addiction to Unhappiness. Jeffrey, let's end with some take home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
Yeah, I think the take home message is for any health system, your most important asset is your physician. And what you need to think about every day is, how can I nurture and improve our physician relationships so every physician leaves the building in the evening saying, I feel valued, I feel appreciated, and I'm given the resources to take the best care I can of my patients.
Jeffrey, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and insight, and thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciated it and enjoyed it. You have a great day.